Hello, everybody. Welcome to Vancouver UFO. Today is March 26, Saturday, 2022. And my name is Jeff Selver, and today I'm hosting Vancouver UFO for my presentation, How I Met the Federation of Planets. This is my 23rd contact event, and I don't have the write-up, but basically this is the end of a period of my traveling years, and the beings kind of capped off my experience with them with a kind of a grand hurrah where they kind of show the meaning of the program that I was with them, and then they give a lot of details about what they're kind of doing in the back end. So so someone's microphone is not muted. I can hear your dog. There we go. I think we're good. Not that we don't mind hearing a dog, but great. So I'm just going to put us into screen share. Okay. Great. Okay, welcome everybody. As I said, this is my presentation, How I Met the Federation of Planets. This is the biggest contact event that I had with the beings. And, you know, it all just seems very unrealistic. And I really understand that. But, you know, I have all these ways that I verify for myself that these events occur. And this, some of those are corroborations when I have these memories and I pull them all out, and then I learn later that there is corroborating information. I'll be pairing that up today, you'll see. Also, another method is I mentioned in my book launch, it's the beings kind of show me I experience the same thing twice, or in this case, multiple times. And what that does for my memory is it confirms that even though this thing is really strange to observe, let's say seeing my thoughts on the computer, I verify that I 100% saw my thoughts on a computer that day. And so I have events like that help confirm for me that these events, A, definitely really happened, but also B, that this one really definitely occurred. And even though it's just so strange and out of this world, it definitely happened, and I'll put the pieces together for you today. So thanks for everyone for being here. So welcome. So today's presentation, I'll be basically laying out some words that the CIA officer John Ramirez has said about alien genetics in the human population. I will be recapping, a brief recap. This is the 23rd contact event. I'm assuming not everyone here has seen my presentations or has read my book. My book is available at my website, jeffselver.com. So I'll be doing a brief recap, so today makes sense for those who have not seen any of my past content. Just a brief word on consciousness in the human mind to help explain some peripheral content of the story. And then I'll just delve into the contact event. 23, Toronto, spring 2001, 23 years old. There will be a reflection period. And I have a brief summary at the end about my own personal experience listen, I'm convinced I have alien genetics, and I'm convinced a lot of people have alien genetics. And I just want to speak a bit about what I think that means for me, and just the details about what I feel that it means. And then we'll open up a Q&A afterwards. Okay. So on April 27th, 2020, the US Department of Defense formally released 3 Navy videos that contain unidentified aerial phenomenon. On June 25th, 2021, the Pentagon released the UAP Task Force report admitting that there have been unexplained encounters between the US military and mysterious objects. The report admits the encounters could be previously unknown aircraft from China, Russia, or even a non-government terror group. On November 10th, 2021, Avril Haines, the director of national intelligence, that is the executive head of the United States Intelligence Committee, i.e. the chief spy, speaking at the Our Future in Space event at the Washington National Cathedral, was asked about UAPs. She admitted there remains things about the strange encounters which the intelligence community simply does not understand. Always, there's also the question of, is there something else that we simply do not understand, which might come extraterrestrially? So those words were a big deal. The US Sun said, alien bombshell, UFOs buzzing US warships, maybe aliens, as encounters show something we don't understand, says America's top spy chief. Most people, I think, missed this. On February 5th, 2022, Chris Mellon, the former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Intelligence, spoke to the Daily News web series Rising. It was a morning talk show, and said, based on what we know about UAPs, aliens are the best explanation. Again, there was a headline, UFO expert Chris Mellon, based on what we know about UAPs, aliens are the best explanation. Now, we're going to just back up a couple months. And so for those who know, Lou Elizondo was the head of the UAP program that the Pentagon ran. And so he is a man with a lot of knowledge. And he's been going, when he speaks in media, he has a kind of a scripted set of lines, and he really just wants, it's clear, he's just opening the doors to a mystery. What is this mystery almost? It's kind of what you're left with. Yet when he's on podcasts, he goes deeper into the subject, and he knows a lot more than he lets on. And he's talked about a DOA before, non-disclosure, NDA, and NDA, he's talked about a non-disclosure agreement. So he cannot reveal certain amounts of information. But in this interview, he let on something that is very significant. So with Theories of Everything, with Kurt Jaimungal, Kurt asked him, so on October 21st, 2021, Kurt asked him in a previous interview, he explained the information that when humans learn about this information about what's going on with UFOs, UAPs, and then who's behind them, it would be sombering to the public. The interviewer asked him to expand on this. And what he said is very fascinating. Imagine everything you've been taught. Oh, hi there. Someone's microphone is on. You can hear music in the background. Maybe someone who just came in. Groovy. Okay, awesome. Thank you. And okay. So imagine everything you've been taught, whether it's through Sunday school or through regular formal education in school, or what our political leaders have told us. And yes, maybe our mothers and fathers around the dinner table have told us, or maybe at bedtime, about who we are, our background, and our past. What if all of that appeared? What if all of that appeared to be not entirely accurate? In fact, the very history of our species, the meaning, what it means to be a human being, and our place in this universe. What if all of that was now in question? What if it turns out a lot of the things that we thought were one way aren't? Are we prepared to have the honest question with ourselves? Are we prepared to recognize we are not at the top of the food chain potentially? That we are not the alpha predator? Maybe somewhere in the middle. There's a point in the conversation where we will have to do lots of reconciling with ourselves. Are we going to find ourselves in a place where history will have to be rewritten? Then, John Ramirez spoke for the Unidentified Celebrity Review. This was a really good interview. I really like these guys, the Unidentified Celebrity Review. They do bring in interesting people. And so they had John Ramirez, and this was his first time speaking in this kind of format. John Ramirez served in the CIA from 1984 to 2009. At the CIA, he was an intelligence analyst in the Chief Electronic Analyst Branch, specializing in ballistic missile defense weapon systems, radars, and technical collection operations. John is a US Navy veteran in the electronics warfare technician field. And he also claims to be an experiencer. Very unique. He has experiences on UFOs taken as a child. John Ramirez says that he was part of a CIA presentation in which, after World War II, the CIA had become aware that humans are in fact alien hybrids, and that certain genetic lines have greater augmentations than others. So he says, after World War II, they discovered that humans are hybrids. We are all hybrids. Some are more hybridized than others. They told us that they know there are certain families, i.e. genetic lines, that have been hybridized to a greater extent than others. When pressed how he knew, so he's just at a presentation. So how did you know that they knew? And he has a whole body here where he kind of says, somebody told us, B, within the CIA, they don't try to, covertly lie to each other, right? Within the CIA, plus he knew the people who were talking, and he knew that they are higher up and that they have access to more information. So he trusted this information. The reason I find it fascinating is because it matches what I was told in today's presentation, in today's contact event that I'll explain. I'm very confident the government is sitting on this. And in order to understand the UAP in its entirety, where it came from, why they're here, who's driving them, you have to go back to, like, what's our role? Why are they talking to us? Why do they want to interact with us? You got to build that bridge to the fact that we are hybrids, and we may have been hybridized by them, and they themselves may be hybrids, in order to get back to the true story and why it's so secret. So very fascinating and very telling. And again, it always links up to stuff that has happened in my contact events. So another very important point I didn't highlight here in the presentation, but I do want to say, so he repeats at one point in the interview, we are hybrids, they are hybrids. So who made us? Which again, always comes back to, there's another level above this one level, the one level that's just we're observing, which is UAPs, and then maybe about who's behind them. There's still another upper level about who's on top of those people, those beings inside the crafts. And again, that is a bit talked about in my presentation today. If President Biden all of a sudden says, we're all alien hybrids, the stock market would plunge. We have to have this controlled dissemination, a little at a time. We already know about the craft. Okay, there's things in the air, great. And now for the first time, somebody in the position of authority, like the DNA, Avril Haines, said there is an extraterrestrial component to this. That's the second thing that needs to be talked about, and go from there. So that's just very fascinating. This information is coming out. And I've always said that this is, it's too big. It's just too big for the human population. And it would change everything. Also, my very, very first contact event, which I went public with July 5th, 2020, is that the whole issue is that it would change the planetary identity. It would change our identity as a planetary species. And that is exactly what he's talking about here. Or Lou Elizondo was talking about, that there is a psychological shift that has to happen for us and who we think we are as a species. And that will play an effect. This is not just humans learning about, little aliens and it's all Star Trek and Star Wars, and we all go back to normal. This is a very big issue. And again, the beings do seem to give me some light about that here today. So, okay. So a recap. I learned about the Federation of Planets in my 7th contact event. I'm always really excited when my content has cooperation, not just with other contactees and experiencers, but with governments, people going out, whistleblowers. And I did my presentation, and then, oops, sorry, that was by accident. Changing my height. Sorry, there's lights here and things in my way. Sorry about that. But so I'm always really excited when there's cooperation, not just with experiencers, but with government whistleblowers. And Haim Eshed, who almost, I guess, on record, having been the Israeli space defense minister for, I forget how many years, but a career out of it, And so obviously to the possibly a decade or more. And he on record mentions a galactic federation of planets that is speaking to humans, and in kind of a government level. And I had gone public with my presentation a month prior. And so I love that that kind of just always matched up. I had no knowledge. I just do these presentations without knowing how it kind of interconnects to, you know, the UFO field and what's out there. So that was a really fascinating collaboration for myself. And so I did learn about a federation of planets. It gets mentioned to me in my 7th contact event, mainly just the agreement that I had with the Greys was benefiting other species, and that other species were aware of it. So I just kind of in passing, not in passing, but it's very surface. I get mentioned that there's this federation, and I see a consciousness object that imparts information about that federation to me. And so I do have that experience here. In my 8th contact event, I go to a base orbiting the planet Earth, sitting out in, it seems to be low Earth orbit. And I'll go back to that space base today, so it's relevant. In my 18th contact event, I met humans who, at the time, I didn't know what their role was, but they were just like me. They were teenager. I was 20 when I met them. I may have been 21 at the time, and so they were young like me, and I met them on a craft, and we were all doing doing some kind of test, and so we were paired up with a gray alien. I was paired up with my gray alien that I experienced the most, the elder, and then each one had a gray alien that they were paired with, and I eventually kind of recognized, hey, wait, these are humans, and I got excited, but I didn't have a chance to interact with any. So again, I'll see those humans today. Lastly, before the presentation, I find it really important to give some context here. So I had this kind of attainment experience called the Rising with the aliens. They facilitated this experience for me. It was in part facilitated by reading a book about the UFO cult group Heaven's Gate. And I had trouble balancing what happened to me. And then I eventually end up with a spiritual master, a guru, a Vedic teacher who comes from a long lineage of masters. And then he helped me over time kind of understand what happened to me. But I don't believe you can understand any of that context if you don't understand something about the relationship between the mind and the heart, about consciousness, where it's originating from, and then how the mind is really an interpreter of that experience. And so this line is actually my teacher's line. It's very powerful. Awakening your consciousness doesn't mean anything if you can't control your mind. And so for those who are aware of my story, right, I think that he also explains the cult group, right, that UFO group, because they apparently had something. They had some kind of, they were able to do some things, but obviously they were a bit, lost because they did what they did. So, and that kind of explains that. That also explains, because you're just interpreting. You're a machine. You can have pure experiences, but then the next moment you could be trying to interpret that pure experience for yourself and say, oh, it means this or it means that. And you can't just let go to the actual experience alone. It's being governed by your mind and your brain. And so I always like to say we are a heart with a mind and not a mind with a heart. We fully believe that our orientation is up here and that this is something we have to kind of deal with all of our lives. But from everything I've learned, the white room, where I'm turned into an orb, which is compressed in a compressed being state in my consciousness, the rising, which is that attainment state. Then with my guru and all Vedic philosophy, we are our heart. That is the core consciousness, and everything is being produced out of the being state, and the thoughts kind of come out of the sense of being, what you're choosing to be. So this is the kind of the description I create. This is your I am, your being state. And then the mind is simply and only an interpreter, a machine using information based on past experience collected from the 5 senses. So every single human can technically interpret their consciousness, their experience of a pure consciousness, all differently, right? So, and that explains today, you'll see so after my 23rd contact event, this is where we are now, I had gone through this attainment thing that happened in 1997. And then all of traveling, I was confused by it all. And I kind of like couldn't hold on to it. And I'm honest about that struggle in my story. And I got traumatized by it eventually. And now at the stage in 2001, I had formed a PTSD. I formed a post-traumatic stress disorder around having attainment. It is so screwed up, but it is exactly what happened. I kind of created this part of me that shoved down, or the moment I would feel some kind of connection, my brain just said no. And it really created all the associations of traveling, which was abandoning my life, isolating myself. All those were hurts, and they were real hurts and pains that came. Oh, and also, right, I hope the perspective is clear now. Something happened to me. The 1997 experience is me feeling like a victim. So I don't think anybody can understand this, right? It's not me thinking, oh, I had some attainment. It's me being like, what happened to me? And then kind of feeling like something happened to me, and I become a victim of sorts to this universe that creates this experience on me. And to have an answer for it, of course, now heals that. But it really did at this point in the story, I have this trigger that shuts down my kind of higher self experience. And so again, that's just required to understand some things that will happen today. Okay. Toronto, spring 2001, 23 years old. I was living in Toronto. There's a whole backstory about how the Greys literally led me to my wife while traveling. I was traveling and she was traveling, and become this romantic story, how we have all these synchronicities, all these miracles or magic, if you will, that kind of keep happening, that kind of put us together, and we fall in love. And then I kind of like don't know what to do with myself. So I decide I'm going to go check out where she lives, and she has a guru, and I was kind of having synchronicities about wanting a spiritual teacher, a master, and then she had one. It kind of all seemed meant to be. So I decided to go follow her in Toronto, and right away when I moved to Toronto, I had a bunch of synchronicities, and I got a job right away, and I got a place to live right away within 2 weeks. So it all kind of seemed like this is meant to be. I'm meant to stay here. So I did it. I decided to end my travel years and live in Toronto. And for those who know Toronto, it's very different from any nature you experience in BC and any experience of traveling around like a hobo, like I was doing at the time. It is a dense urban jungle, I think the densest in Canada. And I lived at Bathurst and Lawrence, for those who know. This is Bathurst and this was Lawrence. And I actually lived in a low rise behind this shopping mart. I think it was Save on Foods or something. I can't remember. Anyway, this was my hood at the time. And this was my low rise. And I literally lived in a bachelor on the top floor. So one Saturday morning, I don't know, it seemed in the memory, it kind of seemed very early, like 10 a.m. Something I would have done at the time is gone for a walk very early on a Saturday morning. And I would have, gone for a walk around the block, done something like this, and kind of come back around. And then as I was coming back around, literally in broad daylight, coming, walking, and I'm somewhere around here in front of my building, kind of right here-ish, I'm taken, just bop, taken. And there's nothing. I don't see or hear or nothing. I'm just in one spot, and then in the next, I'm in a craft. And it was abrupt for me, and I'm and I'm like, and then all the kind of like memories come back, but everything kind of floods back, and I'm what the hell, as I'm like gaining my kind of composure, and then all of a sudden all the memories recur. And for those who know the story, I was traveling for 2.5 years and I don't even know, my 8th contact event to my 21st. So whatever that number is, that's over 10. It's a lot of contact events with gray aliens. Sorry, let me do my math. 1, 2, 3. So it's 13. I think it's 13 contact events, all traveling. So I had the mentality, who I was traveling was a free guy. hippie almost, right? Very loose, had no rules, no responsibilities, and was living this very free and carefree lifestyle, trying to be very spiritual and carefree. And so the moment that I'm here, I'm having all the flashbacks of that period of my life, and I'm like missing it. I'm having like, oh, I loved that period of my life, and I had this whole like psychological thing that occurred, this split of like this new world I was in. And the second thing that occurred was kind of guilt, because I got mad or had a fight or something with the elder, blaming them for the experience. And because I felt that I really needed to know about the contact events. And it became obvious in that very second that they had known my life would change and go to Toronto. They knew these events. They knew like kind of a future. They knew the outline. And I realized for the first time that they knew that. And I felt guilty because I got mad at the elder. Anyways, this whole like psychological drama that occurs sitting in a craft. By the way, I end up sitting, and there's two beings at the top, and they're kind of not even acknowledging me. And I kind of get it. I just need to sit, and we're going somewhere. And this is a craft. It's an oval type space, and there's a monitor up front. And I sit down, have all those feelings of reflection. And also another distinct thing is I was in a spiritual position with them, and now I'm with a guru, and it felt like they had actually handed me off. There was a sense of like, they were my spiritual teachers. Now it's time for my human spiritual teacher. And there were these distinct moments, all kind of the psychological reflection that was occurring in the craft here. So just, personal stuff again about what's going on with us. So I'm sitting here, and then all of a sudden the craft stops. I'm seeing fast movement, and I'm seeing kind of grid-like look of fast movement. The screen is black, but with kind of a gold grid look. And so I can see it's moving. I don't really understand what's going on. And then the person kind of appears here. And the person appears, and she shocks me, and she's like, I'm like, hi, kind of trying to welcome her. And she's looking around, and then she looks at me and she says, oh, hi. And then I realized, I kind of like put it all together, that I recognize this face. I recognize this person. She was the human who I met in my 18th contact event, or saw across from me on my 18th contact event. So I put it together. And so she says, where are you from? So she's asking me, and she's projecting out. And I say, Toronto, Canada. And then she says, Aklak, Serbia. And I kind of hear something like that, Aklak, Serbia. And of course, when I say, she says, where are you from? She doesn't project English to me. She's projecting like feelings. And so because everything is in telepathy on the craft, it's all happening kind of in projected feeling. And it's very fascinating, this part, because it kind of discerns the type of telepathy I had with the beings versus telepathy that I think is occurring between everybody. And even though you're speaking English, it would be kind of like you're speaking on a craft, but you're also emoting. And I think humans are doing all this stuff all the time anyway. We're kind of projecting out our thoughts and feelings as we communicate with each other. And on the crafts, it was more receptive. So even though she might speak in her language or say something in her language, I could pick up that she was curious about where I am, curious about my orientation, curious about the location, about where I'm from. I could feel it. I could feel that was the gist of what she was getting at, and I understood that. And so I blurted out Toronto, and she said Aklak, when I heard her say something like Aklak, Serbia. But then I also kind of understood, wait a minute, like we're in Serbia? Like that didn't make any sense. It didn't feel like we were gone, this was 20 minutes or 15 minutes even. This was minutes, and we were in Serbia. So we went from Toronto to Serbia in what felt like minutes. Then it kind of drew my attention further onto the screen, and it seemed like we were low flying, and it seemed gridded, like the craft was this turns and turns, but very sharp jolts, all on a black screen, and then everything stops. And I knew someone was coming. Someone was going to be beamed up in the craft, and I was looking around out of excitement. And then to my left, so I'm here, and to my left, like right here, this a black man, I guess, a black man, not a boy, but we're all young, so it feels like boys and girls, but a black man kind of manifests. So what I see is very quickly this compiling of, it seemed like cubes, all compiled up really fast, like, and then this larger halo kind of faded in, and then there was a person. So it was this white light cubed in stuff that kind of formed upwards to a larger halo, and it all happened within a second or two. And then there was a person there, and he at first he's shocked, and then he smiles. It makes sense to me that when you realize you're back on a craft, you kind of have like, oh, hey, I love these guys. You kind of like, oh, you're having a good experience with them. And he kind of had a jovial, like, he was excited to be back on the craft, or there's a sense of like his like excitement about it. And cover stuff up here, sorry. He projects, where are you from? Who are you? Kind of like a, where are you from? Who are you? And I'm like, Toronto, Canada. And then she is Akhlak, Serbia. And that's when he says something like Petesh or Pederesh, Congo. And so like, you know, we're moving really fast and across the planet, and in different locations. It doesn't even seem consistent. It's not even geographically makes sense, right? It's kind of, I'm not even certain what's designating who gets picked up when, but that seemed really strange to me. And then, so there's the three of us, and then another person comes in. And he appears here, and then she's addressing him, and she's asking questions about who he is. And I recognized the black fellow as the human who was with us in the group in the 18th contact event. And I recognized the Russian fellow as being from the 18th contact event. And so I knew these humans. I knew who all of us were. And then he sits down, and I hear between him and the Serbian girl that something about Russia, and I hear that he identifies as being from Russia. Someone else appeared, and it was a male, and the male here is he's blonde hair, and he has a part down his side, very distinct look. And then I hear between the three of them, he's Eastern European, or he has some kind of identification of coming or feelings from Eastern Europe. And then another person. So it's just all this period, we're just kind of waiting, and people are showing up in the craft. And a woman from appears here, and she has a flowery dress, and she has kind of longer, curlier hair. And then they're all talking amongst each other. And then I can hear that she identifies as being from Iceland. And so we're all kind of just like, and you know, it almost seem like you should be talking with each other, but there was a language barrier. There was actually still a barrier, even though we were able to communicate telepathy. We were getting our information out through kind of like feelings and impressions, as opposed to easy words. We all kind of just focused on the screen. And as we were focused on the screen, that's when I saw that we were moving upwards, and I could see that we were going into space. And I recognized right away that this was, or the feeling or something about it was the same as the tall space base I went into in my 8th contact event. And so I was really excited that I had been to this space before. And yet this time, instead of it being a fully space base, full object, it was not transparent, but it had some kind of cloak on it or something. And yet portions of it, like the corners, were still visible. So you could see through it, you could see all the stars through it, yet brief corners were still visible, almost maybe like markers or something. I don't know. And we were kind of moving into this empty space, and that turns into, it kind of just blips on the screen, and we're in a hangar. And I recognize the hangar as the same hangar I was in the 8th contact event. I just loved that I'd been here before, and I was super excited. And the craft lands. This is kind of a redrawing of I just took the same drawings I did from the 8th the presentation I did the 8th contact event, and it lands like kind of here-ish. And then the beings kind of guide us, and they walk us out, and we all walk out single file. And I'm kind of at the back of the lineup, and then the Congo fellow is behind me, and the Russian fellow is in front of me, and we walk out. And then I as I'm out in the hangar, I actually turn around, and I expect to see a disc, because it was kind of this oval shape, but it turned out to be this. It turned out to be this kind of tube, this tube with a cone, like a nose cone, like an airplane would have, which I thought was really weird. And it was pretty raised and had this kind of this pathway coming down. So then we all walked out single file. I just took the same map that I had from the 8th contact event again, and we walked out of the hangar. And instead of, so in the last time I was here, we went this way into a transporter and went up a level. This time we go right, and there's a hallway, basically here-ish, and we all kind of single file, and we walk up the hallway. And then to the right, the gray alien is not talking to us. He's just motioning with his hand to enter a door on the right side here. And we all know to kind of walk into the door. No one knows what's going on. And we walk into this space. Basically, it looks like this. We walk in, and there is a couch, kind of like a large couch, a large table, a large screen. And then there were like blacked out areas. This area was like kind of all blacked out, like, or like some dim lighting, and this was blacked out. And then there was like a greenhouse. Like, I don't understand it. There were plants, and there was glass. This was glass, but then it was an indented space. And then on the walls of it were this oozing lights, and there were like yellow, red, orangey lights that were oozing, and it emoted a comforting, warm child play art feeling. It was a strange, oozing out feeling, and it was all very beautiful. The whole room kind of had this beautiful feeling to it. As we walked in, we heard a telepathic voice say, "Come, sit down." And so we all knew to sit down on the couch, and we all filed in, and it was a single long couch, and we all kind of just sat on this couch. It's pretty comfortable. It didn't sag. It seemed to just take us in a relaxed manner. I looked around, and then the elder was here, but so were so in the 18th contact event, I saw for the first time the elder has a very unique look. She has this really strong chin look with these kind of this face structure. And then she has a cone head that goes back. So all of them had the exact same style. They were all 4 feet tall with this kind of distinct look on their face, and they had cone heads, but the cones were all slightly shaped differently. So some had like indentations going in, one had a bit more thinner. So they all like had to look like they were a part of something, and it looked like they belonged to something that was unique within their own grouping. Like they were a group designated by their look. Something was very unique about them. And I kind of got it. And one of them was coming over with a tray, and it had drinks on it, and they were serving us. And we took cups, and it had like, I remember drinking it, and it had sweet water, had a sweet kind of taste to it. So pretty wild. And then we don't know what's going on. And then one of the elder aliens gets in front, and she kind of becomes the facilitator. Please excuse my poor drawing. I do the bulbous head, but it is back, right? It's the whole point is these heads, it has an extension of this kind of cone. So it does look weird when you just look on a face, flat on the face. But so she sits in front of the screen, and she says, "Welcome, our cherished friends. This is the golden time to share with you what you have become, what you have taught us, what you have done for us." And we were like, what? We're all looking around at each other. "You've all been part of a special program, and now we get to share it with you." So she just busts right out. "Back in ancient human history, when humans couldn't fend for themselves, we made beings like you. But those genes are lost and long gone. They've immersed themselves into the population, and we have been looking for them again, and we found them with you." So that when she's projecting feelings and imagery, and I did, so her feelings are this prehistory, this, I say here, there was a feeling that she was referring to human prehistory over 100,000 years ago, that they had made humans mixed with gray alien DNA hybrids, and that those genetics were in the population somewhere. And us humans in the room were a small portion of those who still carry a specific genetic marker of that earlier group. Presently, I'm reminded of the light grid that I saw in the afterlife vision. So by the way, I had this experience in my first contact event where I see a light grid where the aliens are tracking bodies that have gray alien DNA in them. And so this was kind of a connecting piece where they're very aware of this stuff. Tracking bodies. So presently I'm reminded of the light grid that I saw in the afterlife vision. that that was tracking bodies on Earth that have gray alien DNA. I was under the impression there were hundreds of thousands, if not millions of humans with this DNA. You helped us recover old genes within the human population, and these genes will help further human populations. It's a very typical gene of its kind that helps elevate humanity. So you're all genetically unique, bonded by a similarity between each other. We are grateful for your work in this program. So she steps out of the way of the screen, and then on the screen is a galaxy. And so she pointed to a spot on the screen. So she points to a spot on one of the inner arms and says, where we come from, we are in your Earth's Zeta Reticuli star system. So she says, that's what she says. She then pointed at another spot on the galaxy on one of the inner arms, which I presume to be Earth. She kind of just pointed at another spot. And then she says, that's where our bodies and our kind are born. And we have blown across the galaxy. And then there was an image from that spot where she was pointing out as Zeta Reticuli, is this wave kind of gets created or forms and spreads throughout the galaxy. An image of a wave traveling throughout the galaxy appeared on the screen, centering from the spot she said was Zeta Reticuli. We've made friends all over and across the galaxy. And now distinct feelings here of, I had the feeling that, they think of us and as the planet and as humans as the friendly star system's neighbor, like this idea that everything's closer to them, the way we would think of our neighbors. They are thinking that way about planets, yet for humans, right, these planets are massive in distance, and we couldn't even conceive of considering calling a planet 39 something light years away a neighbor, and yet here they are very easily able to talk. It's the sense of how large the community was for them, and that's what was being said here. So I had the feeling from her that they thought of humans in a friendly star system of neighbors type way, like the neighborhood for them was much larger than it is for humans. And throughout the galaxy, human genes are valuable. Humans are unique in the sense of your bodies and your brains, the way you perceive your universe and your world, your frame of reference of reality. You're limited, but with the full capacity to expand. And it makes for a great game of being in physical existence. And you will know that a lot of other beings like to seek human genes. That's why there are a lot of abductions. It's all in the genetics of humans. By the way, that word abductions is really strange. It's always, the aliens are always using our frame of reference, like our wording, like this is how you think of it. And then they kind of use those words, right? They didn't change the word abduction to something nicer or however they thought about it. They said it how we think about it, right? So I thought that was really interesting. I understood that this last line to mean that human bodies produce a desirable state of embodiment for our soul, for our consciousness. And you specifically, your genes are valuable. So now she's talking about us in the room. We have worked with you and we are preserving you. We protected you so other beings can't grab your genes. Now, for those who know my story, this fit with my experience because I had 2 semen extractions with other species besides the Greys, the humanoid in Nova Scotia in my 12th contact event, and the man in black in Port Coquitlam in my 17th contact event. So it felt like she was implying the beings were trying to cover up who we were, hiding us because we were valuable to other species. So whatever they did with us, this rising, right? It did something genetically, and then it made us, made other beings who knew about the program want us. So, and there was a sense of that occurring. So your genes are the result of an ancient program that has been compiled over generations. So we combined our material with that human material to produce what is now you. We wanted to mold you and shape you to exercise that power as much as possible, to expand the power within your genes. What we have done is enhance those genetics. This is what you are. Each of you we've done this with. You are now on your way to living out full lives with what we have given you. Embrace it and enjoy it. So now we want to introduce to you the beings that we have worked with to make what you are accomplished. These are our friends of the Federation. So out from this corner here, out of the black, it's kind of a blacked out like hallway. Out from that walks this thing, this creature. This is yeah, that's the best I could do. So this is, again, this here, excuse me, in my, so when the memories were coming out, I actually had 2 flashbacks very early on. The first set of flashbacks were all about the first periods of my first period, this first and second contact event. But also was the last contact event that happened in 2017. I'd known I'd been floated down a hallway, and because it was like so recent, and also it left scratches on my back, and there was this whole kind of like vibe to the night that had occurred. And I see the mantis, or I don't know it, I don't call it the mantis, and because I don't know that's, I don't get told that here or anywhere, but it does seem to be the kind of archetype of the mantis, the same way that other people have talked about it. He controls the program. Anyway, I'll go into that in a second here. But this was the initial drawing I did when I first saw this guy. And it's not through a regression or anything like that. This was a vision after like a flashback, and I'd seen this thing. And I thought, like, what the hell is this thing I'm looking at? And what happened that night? I got taken from my bed, and it had these big yellow eyes, and it looked kind of, this was the initial drawing. But I also kind of said it looked like an aardvark. This is actually a Photoshop where I kind of took an aardvark because it kind of held its hands like this, which, you know, people call them the mantis. So I also know like mantis kind of do that too. They have their kind of like hands like this. And he did have kind of claws that were a bit long. I don't know if he had 3, I don't think he had 3 fingers, but, and it said, so it's not all exact, right? They're all kind of versions of what I saw. And the horse, like kind of a bit more of a stronger jaw, like a horse does actually, like a kind of a bit more of a jaw. But those yellow eyes and the placement of those eyes, no, they're better placed over here. Like this is kind of the look. But anyway, it's some kind of version of all this. And actually he had more brown like that too. But anyway, this thing was a crazy looking creature, and it's slightly disturbing to see this thing's up close. And I had a response to it on the spot. And yeah, so anyway, so he basically takes the center stage, or puts himself center, and he says, kind of off to the side, but he brings his attention to us. But he says, or the facilitator says, "This is our friend." So she addresses him, and he says, "Hello, everybody. I am the mastermind and builder of this great program, executed faithfully by my friends of the ancient spiritual order." And he's kind of motioning or psychically motioning towards the elders, and that's where it kind of like makes sense, where they're some kind of group. They're I think in the book I call them, like, it's almost like there's a nun feeling, like they're kind of a spiritual, like a nuns of a spiritual order. And that's really what the elder, when combined with all the other elders, it feels like she's a part of it. She's kind of some part of spiritual order. And don't forget, also in my 21st contact event, I meet a kind of a guru or some kind of gray alien spiritual master, and it seems like she's the master of the elder, like the elder is reverent to this spiritual master. So there is something going on here. This is as far as it goes for all this type of information about what the elder belongs to and what she's really a part of. But there is something going on here, and this picture became larger for me for the first time when he said that. So I knew he was applying the 4 elders, which when combined projected a presence of nuns of an ancient alien order. He continued, "We are something your human race won't understand." So he just doesn't say anything about his species. The facilitator continued, "And the other race you might be familiar with is the humanoid race who looks like you." So then this humanoid walked out from this hallway space. And then he walks out and he takes center stage. And then he kind of stands flat and his arms are down by his side, and he kind of just looks at us. And he says, and it's all telepathy, "Hello, my people are in ancient culture. In an ancient era of humanity, we involved ourselves. We've come back and forth several times to help out here and there. We are in your Pleiades constellation." So he says it with an emphasis. And it seemed to be that someone in the group, I don't know that it was meant to be me or anybody, I don't know who it was for, seemed to know this, or maybe had prior interactions with this species. I don't really know. But so he said that in this kind of strange way. And he continued, "We live differently than you. We live in harmony. There are much less of us on our planet, and we live much longer than you. And then an image was projected in our minds. And I don't know that Pleiadians do this. And so that's why I kind of have a spot where I'm not really clear who put this image in our head. Not that I had experiences with Pleiadians to know that they do this or not. It seemed very gray, that's all, to put an image in my head. So I could see in this image a single city with buildings that looked like the ones I saw on Venus. But much larger. It was a huge single glistening city, and it was visible from space. So if you were in low Earth orbit, you would see or low orbit of that planet, you'd see a massive, massive city. It was so big. The planet looked like it had a kind of desert lands on it, like Mars almost, except for this massive city in the center. And there was something else about his presence when combined with the grays and this. I'm going to call it the Mantis just so we kind of are on the same page about what I think this being is, but we'll go into a little bit later. But with this Mantis-like being, it was obvious that he was relatable to humans. So these guys shock humans, grays shock humans, and this leader thing shocks humans, but this was relatable. It kind of made it, when compared against them all, it all made sense. So there was something else. It felt like the grays and the large-eyed species were too unrelatable to humans, and that the presence of this humanoid species in the Federation was there to help with relatability, allowing humans to comfortably form a relationship with species within the Federation. So then that's kind of it. The facilitator said, this is our Federation. This is us. This is who you've helped. This is what you have done. You have helped us understand your genes and our role in helping humanity and humanity's growth. Then the facilitator said, get up and start clapping, clap for yourselves. And there was this, it was almost like a command. And we all got up and we started clapping, like vigorously clapping. We're like, yes, yes. And I could feel that I was proud for myself. I was like, yes, and you know, like for those who know the story, I fought, I struggled, and I loved, and I'd done something that was until it was put into a book, it really didn't make sense to other people, and I felt good committing to myself that I'd listened to my spirit against all odds. Really, is what the core of that is, and so I did have a sense of being proud of myself for committing to this and going through with it all the way, even though it was. It was insane. and yet I did it and I made it. And there was this beautiful result at the end, which was a beautiful wife to live out the rest of my life with, and a spiritual teacher to learn from. So it was all really, it did seem to have a reward. It was really powerful. Now clap for, and the facilitator kind of like gestures towards this thing, this leader thing. And so we all start clapping and directing our clapping at him. And he tilts his head back and he flips his paws or whatever they are. He flips them up and he says, thank you, thank you. And he's like taking in the gratefulness, and we're clapping. And then I have this kind of like moment of, this guy is the cause of everything. Like this guy was all of it. By the way, I also had an inkling that I had witnessed or seen this species before, but it was really intense kind of coming out in this way and with this energy. But there was like, he was in prior contact events. I put all the pieces together in the book, but there was, anyway, it was all just kind of making sense. And it was clear to me now that the very first thing that ever happened to me, that white room on the soccer field when I was 16 years old, like, this is him. Like, he did this to me. and it was his idea. Like, something about it all kind of made sense. He was the facilitator, or he was the program manager or the idea maker of this insane thing that I went through. And so it kind of like was a really weird thing, that a connecting piece, that something so strange and such a species so removed from the experience was influencing me so personally, and yet I had no knowledge about his existence. So that was that whole thing is just really a piece there. Oh yeah, then he speaks. This is a bright day, a great reward, because technically you are all my children, and technically you are all their children, motioning towards the elders. We have grown you and made you into what you are. So every contact event, every moment with these beings, or something that's like pushing your boundaries a little bit, like, wait, what? Like, it was clear that those words, they felt this way. They felt we were theirs, children wise. And so he continues, you will be with us for the rest of your lives, in and out. Sometimes you won't see us at all, and some of you may never get these memories, but we will know, and another part of you will know. And we have been absolutely grateful for your commitment, your hardship, your struggles, your loves, and your hatreds. We have witnessed all of it, taken all of it, recorded all of it, analyzed all of it, and used all of it. Nothing has gone to waste in any of your experiences. So thank you. This was new information. Another, like, what? This was new information that their degree of observation was very personal. Like, they were aware of my inner world. So then there's this moment of this distinct feeling between the group of like a love for all of us, even though I didn't really know these humans, and I only knew the elder. There was this idea that we were all part of something, and he was kind of the father of it all. And it was a loving moment of like a collective. And we kind of experienced this like telepathic hug between all of us. So the leader says, get to know each other, talk with each other. So he wanted us now, all humans, to interact with each other. So we're all kind of like, okay. We all sit down on the couch, and I'm sitting next to the Russian fellow. And I hear, when I kind of connect with him, I hear words like Stofle or Stofle kind of like projected out. And so I'm assuming he's telling me his name. I'm not really clear. And so I project, tell me your story with the beings. Like, I want to know like how they interacted with your life. Knowing how they interacted with mine, I need to know how they interacted with someone else's. So he starts, now here's what's really fascinating. What's happening is they're talking and they're projecting imagery, and they're projecting feelings. And they may not be saying full sentences like I would be to you right now. They might be saying like, I did this. And then maybe they might be focusing, because it's the whole contact, the whole communication is happening in projected imagery and vibrations of feelings. And I will do another presentation where I draw on some of this telepathy, because it helped me understand how telepathy was working in general. But the bottom line is that they're almost like data dumps, the same way that the gray aliens would do data dumps. If you just projected the energy outwards and you projected the feelings and the emotions, there were things that I could draw in and then understand in a kind of a subconscious, or understand on a deeper level. So I saw an image projected from his mind of a man that felt like a father, and he included feelings of tension, of expectations from this man, almost like a data dump. I saw that what he was telling me was about family expectations and traditions. I could feel this. That's the feeling I could have. Then I saw an image of a gray alien in his room and in his home. So unlike me, they were coming into his personal home and space. I could feel he had resistance to family traditions and contact events where with the beings were happening at the same time. So there was this really strict cultural sensation, vibration, and alien contact events, which are so out of the box from traditions and structure, were happening at the same time in his home, where these experiences of tradition were happening. So it's these kind of conflicts were in his imagery. I could feel he had resistance to family traditions. Yeah, sorry. And then I then saw an image of him in the white room, though from his reference, I saw he felt it was a glass room. So because there was a sense of the walls of the room, even though you couldn't see them, and I do mention a brief sentence about that or something in the first chapter, it appeared his life was altered by it like mine, but it seemed he was telling me he used its powers, and only now can I assume a genetic activation, to break free from traditions with his father. The energy behind his imagery changed to relaxed, and I saw images of paintings. So his other me, so he is another me, and that guy is an artist, and he was being inspired by this like spiritual transition that occurred to him, and it turned into paintings and a feeling that he was exploring artistry and moving away from traditions. And I understood his art was inspired by his contact events without him knowing that's what he was painting about. So to my surprise, his story didn't involve traveling or removing oneself from society like mine. In essence, the degree or intensity of the white room and genetic activation kind of seemed spread out. It didn't seem to climax the way the beings did it with me. And while my interactions with these beings were centered around traveling, he appeared to be breaking family traditions and living from his heart, and being an artist at that too. I then showed him when it was kind of clear he was like finished, or there was a kind of a sensation. Then I was like, okay, here's mine, and I kind of focused on my life in Coquitlam, the white room. I kind of gave an image or the vibration of the white room. And then the idea that I was like seeing the beings at nighttime, there was some really distinct contact events that were really that really gave the feeling for me of what this was all about. And one of them was meeting the one in the nighttime. And then I was doing full moon rituals at this time too. So there was mysticism going on in my life, and it was all inspired by the beings. That the genetic activation timed with my parents leaving and my life falling apart initiated my travels. So there was this really distinct moment. And then symbolically, mine as well explained in the image of a gulf, where I kind of like left life and then came back to life, left civilization and came back to civilization. In between, I sent images of my nature exploration, spiritual adventure in the mountains and the islands, the winter of Newfoundland, and seeing light in the sky, like not knowing they're aliens. And then at the end is my partner and her guru, and then there was this kind of like smile and exchange when we were done. And then that was like, that's fascinating. This is very fascinating to see how the beings interact and affect other humans. So then I turned to my left, and the Congolese fellow, the man from Congo, was there, the black fellow. So when I project, like, kind of tell me your story. So I see a pond and I see nature. And then again, he has a removal from society feeling. And I could feel, so I identified with his feeling, and I realized he had an experience similar to myself, where it did seem to climax, and then he removed himself from society. Also, by the way, another corroboration, because he was speaking French, and I didn't know that Congolese people actually have French as their native language, so I could hear his like French accent in his telepathy. I then felt he had some kind of like religious thing going on too. So there was it became clear that whatever happened to him, this climax, he was a Christian, and he internalized it all as kind of a religious experience. And then he was like distinct about the removal was from society was 40 days and 40 nights. He then showed me an image of himself in the white room and him as an orb. And not that I think, by the way, that these are chronological for him. I think he's kind of like you and me, who'd be like, oh, I did this. And then he's explaining back and forth timelines like you would with a human as you're relaxed and telling some people things about your life. So because then he explains about the white room and how he was an orb. But I saw him as an orb. He was showing himself flying around as an orb in the white room. And he also could feel the glass walls. So there was this impression, he identified it a little bit differently than me. He gave a strong impression of his experience was intertwined with his religious beliefs. So the other him was religious, and that guy thought he was going through a Christhood. Very powerful, man. I love this stuff. And I can make out in his feelings and language, he embraced the climax as having gone through a Christhood. And the period of the genetic activation was experienced for him as going through as the kingdom of heaven within. And I saw images of the poor and the homeless and children. So he kind of went into, he was like saintly, right? He kind of went into communities to try to help people, turn his rising into something that helped society and helped the downtrodden. It was very powerful. And he showed me that he was observing himself becoming nurturing and a helpful person, and that he had strong feelings of idolizing saintliness. And so, very fascinating. And then I give him my experience, and I kind of do a repeat of what I did with the last fellow. Then we kind of move around, and I sit next to the woman with the flowery dress from Iceland. And then hers seems a bit more low key, like the first fellow. I saw an image of, so she shows me an image of the white room, but there's colors, and there's a feeling of the rainbow room, because there was also lots of colors in the room. And for her, it was about the colors and the lights. She showed me images of the beings and the contact events, and how she was guided in relationships with the people in her life. So the beings, the aliens, seemed to talk to her about her relationships. which is very, again, different about how they handled all of us. Their influence altered her life in a way, the way she related to other humans. So from her, I saw images of a man and a feeling of family and something like her brother. And there was some kind of like stuff going on between the relationships in her life, and that the white room and genetic activation were used to seek genuine and authentic uplifting. Like she was eradicating her own ego structures to understand how to better make bridges and connections with other humans. And then I gave her my experience as well. And then at this point, I look at the aliens, and they're all just staring at us, right? They're facilitators, and the entire group of them are observing us with scientific like curiosity, like, wow, like look at these humans and the way, we gave them all this stuff and now they're sharing it and the way they're talking about it and internalizing it. And they're all just kind of fascinated scientifically as we all share each other's stuff. Then there's kind of a switch again, and the blonde-haired man who had the part down his side, who kind of gave the Eastern European vibe, he sits next to me. And I immediately saw images of a war-torn country. And I saw gray aliens visiting him in this country, and he had a kind of like a political and activist energy. His personality was almost conflicting. His personality was like conflicting, like he would seek conflict in relationships for betterment of people, right? Like for good reason. He showed me the white room, and it seemed that he identified it as the big space. So he kind of saw it, for me, I guess it's the white room, but for him, it was like this big, massive space he went into. And I felt a stern lack of fear. And that's how the energy was channeled into him. And it increased his fearlessness. And he proudly showed me images of him walking in a war zone. Basically, two armies are fighting each other. And here's this 20-year-old kid who's like he's relying on faith is what he's doing, not knowing that power of faith was part of like the experience with the beings, the way the beings guided and helped my traveling times. They apparently were doing the same thing for this guy as he's pushing his own personal boundaries and going into war zones as a civilian and as this kind of like activist to fight against, how dare you make this land that I love be about war. And so he was like rebelling in some kind of way. And again, very powerful actually. And he gave the impression he was reclaiming the nature that had been devastated by the war. And then I gave him my experience also. And then that's it. I didn't get to do the Serbian girl. There's one person left and I didn't get to do it. It got ended. So the facilitator kind of interrupted and stopped things. We are so grateful for this opportunity of learning about, sorry, I have a little blocking me here. We are so grateful about this opportunity of learning about your human interaction with what we gave you. Now, everybody, please stand up and go now with your handler. Thank you. So our handler would be the elder, so the one who kind of takes care of me. And then as we all got up and we seemed to file out or talk with or split up with our elders, we walked by the leader, the Mantis-like creature, and he says everybody's name as we walk by him, indicating I know exactly who each of you are. So he says my name as he walks by.